is also going to let us play. I mean, how cool is that? So,
Ready?
Barb, I'm going to turn it over to you. Do you like that very formal introduction?
I love it. Okay, is this on now? No? Hang on. Is it on now?
There it is.
There we go. I can't tell. Am I on? Okay, can you hear me okay? Okay, fantastic. Okay. I'm going to clip this here so I don't. Probably manage to knock it off. Yeah. All right. So, hi. I will stand up in a little bit, and I'm going to knock this over and get in its way right now. My name is Barb Polahar. I have been doing photography for more than 30 years. This one is 30. This is my lovely daughter, Kate, who came to surprise me. So that was so nice. I did not know until she showed up in the parking lot. So yes, you will see her heavily featured in some of my older work because, you know, she was my built-in practice model.
That's such a nice daughter to come.
I know, isn't that the best?
Yeah.
She's the best.
She's been trying to get him to come to one of these for a while. So
Yes.
figured what better day?
Well, I know. I think there are days when you don't know what is going on. But that's okay. So I live in Fairview Heights near Caseyville. I have two other children. My older daughter, April, is 37, 38-ish, something like that. Both the girls are married, have the most amazing spouses, and they both have two grand puppies, which is the most important part. And my son Daniel lives with me. Some of you might have seen him. He helped me out. He does a lot. He is fantastic. All of my children are phenomenal. If you weren't recording, I might say that Kate's my favorite, but since we're recording, I cannot say that on the record. Okay, so
Let's be real, the dog's her favorite.
probably that's accurate. Okay, so what I wanted to do today is, of course, give you a little bit of a presentation on photography. And when I started doing photography, I got into it by accident. So I had to take a humanities class for my 2-year degree that took me 13 years to get. After 13 years and a couple of kids, you know, I'm sure some of you had a similar experience. And I was a very math and science person, and they said, you have to have a humanities. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot draw. What can I do? And so I took a photography class, and coincidentally enough, someone gave me this old, very old camera, which I later found out is very fancy for its time, and that's how the last 30 years of photography were born. So I have not been professionally practicing for the past maybe 8 years or so. I got into teaching because I homeschooled my kids, and then I taught some co-op classes, and then it was kind of a good niche for me. And so that's what I had been doing for the past maybe 8 years. And so I got away from it because of time, and I joined this group about a year ago or so, I'm not sure how long ago, to make myself get back into it. And so for the past bunch of months, I've been making myself go every weekend and take pictures and get something done. But I don't have a darkroom anymore, which is my goal to get one in this house. We lived in, I counted recently for some other thing, I've lived in 26 houses, and 4 of those had a darkroom. And if you ever want to set up a darkroom, let me know. I will help you. It is very easy. It is not that expensive. It's not super hard. You don't have to have a dedicated room, but I do have pictures of a dedicated room that I will show you later when we hook up to this. So I wanted to bring the hand coloring stuff to let you guys do it because I'm a very handsy person. You'll see me during the meeting taking notes and doodling, and I don't like to sit and listen to somebody talk to me without something to do. So I was like, well, let's all do hand coloring, and then that way you can get a little bit of a taste of it. I intended to have more of a make and take little project, but my life has been kind of a train wreck lately. So that did not happen. When I went to order pictures this weekend, I found out you cannot get matte printed pictures in any of the next day photo places. So all of the things that you're using are scraps. They were not properly printed for hand coloring, but you can kind of get an idea of what to do. So I wanted to first kind of give you some techniques so that you can do that while I'm talking. And the other two things I wanted to show you is a little bit about how the camera actually works, because every camera works the same way, whether it's a full point and shoot or an SLR. Well, at least they have the same type settings. And then, when? Thank you, good question. An SLR, she says. What's an SLR? It is a single lens reflex. It's the camera like this that has the little mirror thingy that moves up. And I'll show you that in a little bit more detail later. And I also wanted to give you a few tips on taking pictures of your own work. And I have a printout, not a printout, a document for that I can email to anybody who wants to see it when we get done. Okay, so how you...
If you can wait with showing the demo.
Is it not, did I not talk enough yet? Okay. No, you're fine. Okay, so.
I'm just trying to help.
No, that's fine. I thought I had enough time, but I didn't. Okay, so that's okay. So. Okay. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the darkroom. So this is what I would have developed in a little can. If any of you ever took a photography class, really easy. You can do it yourself in any room that is actually dark. And even when I was visiting my mom, sometimes I would still do it because I would just block off a spot. So I would, yeah, you can, that'd be great. You don't have to stand up if you don't want to. So that is what the negative sheets would look like, and then from there we would always print a contact sheet. And so this is basically just printing what the negatives see, so that you're not just looking there going, what do I even have? I don't know what color, what that looks like. I did briefly play with with color developing in the darkroom. That is a giant pain in the neck, and I did not enjoy it. Anything that makes me cuss more than I smile is not worth doing. So from there, then we have the big and larger, and you may have seen pictures of it or seen it in a class somewhere. And you just shine a light through this, and however far up you hold it is how big you're going to make your picture. So if it's down real low, it's going to make a small picture. If it's up real high, it's going to make a big picture. And so those are really fun and easy, and I miss it, and hopefully I will have one. And if I do, when I do get one put in my house, I plan to let other people come and play around in it, because might as well share the fun, right? Yeah, exactly. Definitely do a workshop for sure.
And whenever you want, they're back.
Okay, cool. Good. Okay, so let me go back to the hand coloring. So the hand coloring is very cool and fun, and I brought 3 products to show you today. Only 2 of which I would really recommend, but I like to show the other ones just so that people kind of know what's there. And so what you could do is take these. You just tell me. Okay. So these are just some examples of my lovely model here. Playing around with different, mostly colored pencils is what I tend to use the most. I like the control of it, and also oils, as you know from regular art, take a long time to dry, and you can't put anything on top of it, and that's just always seems like more trouble to me.
Are they normal colored pencils?
No, they're not. So that's what I did all of these with. This is one of my favorites. I know all of you probably remember Oshkosh, right? So little Oshkosh outfit was super fun, and so we have these, and then this one, and then this one. This one was a little different because I decided to just use one color on it. Gave it a little bit of a different look, and this one, I don't know if you can see, it's just a very light blue wash. These kids were fun when I did my photography. For most of the years that I did it until recently, I did creative portraits of children, and so for these boys, their grandpa was a train engineer, so we found a train museum to go take pictures at. And so that kind of thing. We had one of the samples there is some little kids in a German costume. They had German heritage. So that's what we were doing. And let's see. I think that's that's about it of these. And then I'm sure all of you remember the pictures at the time that were like this with the little kids and the coloring and everything. So that was always super fun. Okay, so these. I'm going to show you what the media are. So we've got these. They are called Marshall is the brand. As far as I know, it's the only brand that is made. And they just say these ones say Memories, Artos, Photo Safe, and then the ones that are on the tables are the older one of the same brand, and they actually say photo pencils on them. And these ones say that on it too, but on the box it used to just say photo pencils, but this doesn't really say that, it just says Photo Safe, so it's a little bit different. And then these are the photo retouch colors, that's these. So these are actually little inks, and these are what are harder to use because they're ink. As soon as you drop it down, you are not getting it back up. So you have to be really careful. These were originally made for retouching, and when I do I had a whole set of these in different blacks and grays. But when you're printing in the darkroom, a lot of times you're going to get like a little space where there's no dots right here, right? So you would take a 0001 brush and literally one dot at a time fill your colors in where they're missing. So that's what these were originally designed to do. But now a lot of people use them to actually do the coloring. So there is one of those on there, and there's also a cup of water on everybody's table so that you can dilute it. There's only one brush. I did not have very many tiny brushes, and I would not mind doing a workshop next time, and then I would have enough supplies for everybody. So that's what these are. And then the last one, these are the oil colors, and they say photo oil colors on them, and they come in a little bit different packaging now because all of this is pretty old. And they look just like tiny little tubes, and it does not take much. So this is what's dabbed into your palettes. Are these. And so when you're coloring with the photo colors, your purpose is in general not to color over, not to cover what is there. So your purpose is generally just to put color over and let the shading and the lighting and all that stuff come from the actual photograph. And so depending on what you're going to use, I only had 2 bottles of these, so these will need to be passed around if you want to use it, but you can start out using it dry. So all you do is you just take the pencil and you color super lightly. All you're basically doing is just getting a little bit of the color onto the photo, and then you're going to take it and you're just going to kind of rub it around.
Let's get to work, people.
And as you rub it around, you're kind of spreading, and sometimes, I think I colored a little bit, not quite lightly enough, you can take this solution and you can use it to kind of color it around, and it's just giving it like a little light wash. And you can also put this solution down first, and you'll see that it goes down a lot darker. And so it says it's distilled vegetable. Yes, it is 2/3 turpentine and 1/3 oil, like a flaxseed oil. And I've got on all of your tables there is one printout for each table that tells you what products we're using, and I'll have this on. I'll email this to you also.
Take a photo.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
You can take a photo of it. So yeah. Perfect. So one thing I alluded to earlier is that if you're going to hand color, you really need your picture to be matte. It does not work on a glossy photo. So if you're going to do this for a project on your own, make sure you get it printed matte. Have it printed a little bit lightly. You can just change that on your computer. It's pretty easy to change. So that's the colors, the pencils, and you can go back over them and make them a little bit darker. And one of the super cool things about the pencils is, and I don't think I left myself one. Can you toss me an eraser? It's a stick eraser right there. So one of the
nice
nice things about the pencils is if you don't like it, you just, whoops. You can just erase it. You can usually erase it pretty well.
Is it a normal eraser?
It's a white eraser or a gummed eraser. And you can also take this PM solution and just give it a little swirl, and then you're starting from fresh again. So it's very forgiving. The pencils are very forgiving. So the oil colors are the ones in the little palettes. You can use either or. So the oil colors, you're just going to get a little bit, and you mostly are going to be doing this with Q-tips and cotton balls. You don't usually use paintbrushes or anything. You're not looking for a brush stroke. You're just looking for that little wash of color. And so if I wanted to color this little hat right here, I'm just going to kind of put some down, and I'm going to just kind of give it a little scrub around so that I'm just giving it a little wash of color. And then the water would only be for the retouching. You cannot put the cup of water. Yeah, you can put that, just use that for the retouch ink if you want to add a little water to it. And then let me show you that. So the retouch ink, I already put that in here. And you can dilute it with the water, which I forgot to bring myself some water. That's okay. And I'm going to show you on it. So I've got a lot of scraps here for you guys to play with. If you dab this retouch on there, you're going to see it kind of lay on top at first. But if you were to try to take this up, you're not getting that off. You're not getting it off with an eraser. You're not getting it off with a PM solution. You're just not getting it off.
That's a little scary.
Yes. So I don't necessarily recommend it, but because people like it, I was like, well, I have it, I'll just bring it. Like, why not? But the most comfortable I am is with the pencils, and they're easy. They're not that expensive. I think it was like maybe $20 for a set of pencils, and they'll last you. I mean, I used mine a billion times, and I still have the same 2 sets that I had from way back when.
So once you put the color on your photo, do you have to pick something off?
You can spray it with a fixative. You don't have to. Most of mine I did not spray with a fixative, and those ones there are somewhere between 20 and 30 years old. But you can spray it with a fixative if you want to. It just kind of depends on what you plan to do. One thing you do need to be extra careful. Hand me this matted one right there. One thing you do absolutely want to make sure is that you use a mat so that your colored surface does not touch the glass when you frame it. That's one thing that is more important. You don't want it to touch the glass. So I usually use a double mat for these just to make sure that there's plenty of room there so that they're not going to bump into the glass when I put it in. So yeah. So it would, possibly only take just a few minutes, and you can just kind of do whatever. This color right here is called Flesh, so it looks pretty brownish, but once you kind of rub it out, you're going to be able to see that it is pretty flesh color, and that's really all you're looking for on these kind of pictures. Oh, you're right.
My mother used to do this. She never let us touch it. We were never shown how to do any of it. And I remember her doing it. And I think they were probably oil.
The oils, they're good and they're a good place.
Much better now than they were, 50 years ago.
I don't think so. I think they're the same. I really think they're still the same. And then another thing, if we're using the color, we don't Yep, just like you're coloring a coloring book, but if you go super light, just super light, you're gonna take your Q-tip and you're just gonna kind of rub it out. And then I'm gonna pass this around. If you want to try this, take the tiniest bit on a Q-tip and rub it in, and you're gonna see it kind of spreads it out better. Can you hand me that one? Yep. So you can spread the color from your pencil out if it's dry, or if you want to spread it more, you can use this. So let me show you. I'm going to show you over here with the green. So if I do this super lightly, and this is just dry, and then I'm going to just take the Q-tip and I'm just going to kind of rub it in, and it's going to rub, and it's just going to kind of spread. And then if you want it to spread more or be darker, you're going to use the solution on a Q-tip first, and then you can see the color goes down a lot darker.
And for those of you that we want you to have a good time and communicate with your friends too, but we want to hear Barb more than anybody else.
Why thank you. Why thank you.
Keep it quiet. Keep it quiet.
Okay. Sally, will you pass this other one around if anybody wants to try that? Thank you.
Which way do
Okay, so basically that's how you do. I would just recommend using the pencils, just try them dry, try them with that solution, just get a little dab on a Q-tip, and then you can just kind of work it in. It's going to let it be darker. So if you want it to look more pronounced of a color, then you can do that. If you want it to be lighter, you can do that. Okay, I have also been told that you can use acrylics and regular media on the photos, and I cannot vouch for the longevity of that, but I have been wanting to try it. I did get some acrylics that I wanted to try at some point, and I just haven't had time. So
I played with acrylics on it, and you can kind of look it on. I would think of the longevity would be. That's a really good term.
Right.
I would think the longevity.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I only know that these are specifically made to last. So photos, when they're properly printed, should last upwards of 100 years, even up to 200 years. And you guys know, you've seen, I
That's why we
mean,
see all them unrounded or unrounded.
right. I have pictures from like the late 1800s that actually nobody in my family knows who the pictures are of. And some of the ladies, they just look so mean.
They do.
And some of them are in super fancy, elaborate wedding outfits, but then they look crabby. So I don't know what's up with that. But yes, they should last a very long time. And so these products that are made by Marshall are made to last that long time like that.
Yeah, and like I said, the ones I showed you.
Yeah, and like I said, the ones I showed you earlier, they're from 20 to 30 years old, depending on which one it was. So, yes.
Is there a time when you applied this that you would not be able to, like, you get it all done and you go, oh, that's a little better there than I wanted to go in with that. Would you be able to go in with that fixed bit?
I don't know how long. I know I have removed it like quite some time after, but I don't know if it's like permanent after like 6 months or whatever. I actually don't know. Yes, I know it's meant to stay on there forever, but I don't know if you could still remove it with that PM solution or not.
Yeah, I haven't tried.
Yeah, I haven't tried.
But it is a lot of fun.
Yes, but it is a lot of fun, and now that I had to drag all this stuff back out and go down the basement and find everything, I'm sure I will be doing more of it in the near future.
Okay, so I want to
show you about how the camera works. I won't need to change anything yet. Back to my notes here.
Okay, I want to make sure I don't forget it.
Okay, I want to make sure I don't forget anything.
Okay, so
How the camera works. Does anybody know how a camera actually works. Like, I know we have some photographers. David, I know you know how a camera works. Right? Who in here knows how a camera works?
Sort of.
Sort of, kind of.
It's like a mirror.
Yes, there's a mirror in there. Yes, there's a mirror in there. So I brought these so that you could kind of see. So this is the first camera that I had, this old camera. It's made by Nikon. It's called Nicomat, and it's an SLR camera. What that means is, open this back up again.
Yeah, you're looking too loud because we can't hear Barb.
Open this back up again. Open this back up again, and you can see some things in here. So this first thing, is it bright enough? Can you see, or is it too dark? Okay. So this one, I just lifted it up, and I'm going to just let it come down so you can kind of see it. That is the shutter, and most of you probably are familiar with the shutter, and you know it makes that little noise when you take a picture, unless you shut that noise off. Still makes a little bit of a sound because there still is a shutter opening and closing, and that's one of the two ways that light gets in on your film. So your film has to have a certain amount of light hit it to make your picture. That's how your picture gets made. And that amount of light gets in two ways, and this shutter is one of the ways. And so when you open it up, this mirror is only in here. The mirror is only in there so that the photographer can see what's going on. That's all it does. It doesn't actually do anything to the picture. It lifts up out of the way, and it takes the picture. And so that's what's happening in an SLR. That mirror acts like a lens, and it just takes what's coming in, shoots it up, and then out the eyepiece so that you can see what you're taking a picture of. Otherwise, you wouldn't know what it looks like.
So the
mirrorless cameras, I don't know how they work. I know they don't have this, but that's the extent of my knowledge of a mirrorless camera.
So when that comes up out of the way,
then you can see where the shutter is going. It's just going to go up, and then the film sits back here. And with the digital camera, it's a digital sensor, but it still works the same way.
That's one of the two ways
that's one of the two ways that the light gets in. And
second way, good question.
the second way, good question. The second way is through your lens, and your lens. Let me see how close this can get. Let's see. Can you see?
That hole gets bigger and smaller.
So this is.
And I know you've all heard of
f-stops. And I don't know what an f-stop is.
That is what controls
how big this
and so
opens
what
up.
happens is you need
And so what happens is you need X amount of light to make your picture, right? And that amount of light that you need is controlled by something we call the ISO, and it stands for International Standards Organization, and it's something like that. But it just a long time ago, a bunch of people from different countries got together and said, we're going to standardize what we call how much light this film needs. So it's got numbers from 25, back in the day, 3200 was the fastest you could buy. Now your digital camera can go up to, I don't know, like 32,000 or something.
So that number just tells you
how much light you need. And the way your camera works is like there's a little tiny George Surratt in there making pointillism on your film. And your old cameras, if you have a lot of grain, that image looks like little dots. And so,
I don't know what I'm looking for.
I want this one and this one. So you can kind of see it's a little dark. I'm sure you're all familiar with how those little dots look on a photograph. That's what they look like. They look like, and my imagery is a little George Surratt in there. And so if George Surratt has to work really fast, this is going to be really big splotches. So those dots are all going to be really big because he's in a hurry. Oh my gosh, I only get to see it for a quick amount of time, and then the shutter's closed or the aperture's not open enough, and I'm not getting that much light, and I have to be fast. That's what gives you a fast, what we call a fast film, needs less light to come in, and your grain is bigger. And then
other
you've
end of
got
the spectrum, where
the
little
other end of
George
the
has
spectrum
plenty
where
of
little
time,
George
he
has
gets
plenty of time and he gets time to make these itty bitty teeny tiny dots. And that is where these very hard to even see the grain, to even see the grain without having a little magnifier. Thanks. Oh, you're just the perfect assistant. I love this.
So
This is
little
awesome.
George is in there.
So little George is in there, and the number on your film speed tells you how much light you need. And that light is going to be a combination of how big is that aperture opening in your lens and how fast is your shutter opening and shutting. So that's how your picture gets made. And there's no right or wrong. I tend to kind of be a person who does the opposite of what most people do. And so back in the day when it was very common to have a very smooth and grainless picture, I had a tendency to shoot with film that was 3200 or infrared that would have very large
And I have
dots.
some to show you.
And I have some to show you. And
Okay, so this one,
that
is
is a 3200 film, and you can easily see the little dots. And I like that it gives a little more texture to the picture, and that's what I always liked about it. This is another one. This is my older daughter, who is not quite as often a model because Kate was little and didn't get a choice. So,
yes.
Whether you want the grain or you don't, it's just a stylistic choice to some degree, but it's also driven by how much light you have available to you in your scene. So if you are outside on a bright sunny day, you can make whatever choice you want for film speed because you've got enough light to do it. But if you're inside and you don't like inside here, you would need a much faster film speed, meaning that you had to have a grainier picture. And so that's just the way it works, and it still works that same way even in digital photography. So then you have the stylistic choices to make of the shutter speed and the aperture. So the shutter speed, that's the little curtain that opens and closes. And by the way, I was going to pass. No, I don't want you to keep getting it down. Well, I don't want you to keep coming to laminate. We'll find somebody that does it and have some.
So you can play around with those.
So you can play around with those. Unless you like throw it at something, you're not going to hurt it. So do play around with it, see what's what. So that shutter speed, when you look at the number on your camera, it tells you a shutter speed. That's actually the bottom of a fraction. And so that shutter speed is telling you, are you going to stop the action? So you've all seen, and actually we could probably switch to the computer now.
Oh no, wait.
So we've all seen. Oh no, wait. One more thing. Sorry, Jay. Sorry.
One more thing about the aperture.
One more thing about the aperture before I turn off the camera. So this one
will have a little number.
Your lens will have a little number, and this one says 1:1.2. Well, that number after the colon tells you how big this opening can get. And so the smaller that number, the bigger the opening. And so when you buy a lens like this that opens way up, it's going to be a lot more expensive. And kind of like an everyday general use lens might be more like, give me that one. This one, I think this one, 3, this is a 4. So this one
only gets that big. It only gets that big. So when it only gets that big, compared to this one, this is going to be called.
You can see this is going to be called a faster lens because it gets more light in. Lets more light in just by nature of the opening gets bigger.
And then these are all
just variations on those two. Okay, sorry, Jay. Thanks. Thanks, Kate. Okay. Okay. Oops, that's not the one.
It's mirroring your screen.
Okay. This is in the wrong, this guy's in the wrong folder. Okay. So shutter speed. So There's two types of motion that your camera can have, and one of them is the bad kind, when you are moving your camera, and you don't want that. You literally almost never want you to be moving the camera, because that's just gonna make your image blurry and in a way that you don't want. But if your camera is getting enough light in, you have it on a tripod, or you don't have, joint issues or whatever, and you're not old and you can hold the camera steady. I could hold it steady a lot better when I was younger than I can now. But you might want the motion of the subject blur. And so that would be like this. This was taken at the shut-ins on one of my digital cameras, and I wanted that blur. And so when you want that kind of blur, you have a slow shutter speed. So this one of the reasons I wanted to do this digitally is to be able to show you. So this one was 1 second. So this was a whole, open it up, close it down for a full second, which in camera photography world is a long time. Okay, so then this one was similar. This one was a 4-second exposure. This was obviously at Niagara Falls. And so I wanted the blur for this one. 4 seconds. This one was 8 seconds, so even longer. And the longer you leave it open, the blurrier things are. But of course you want the stationary things to still be in focus. So back to the Johnson Shut-in one, I did not want my rocks to be blurred from me moving the camera. I only wanted them to be blurred from the water. And then this one was taken 1/640, so my camera would have said 640, but that means it's a fraction. So 1/640th of a second, and that's what gets your water kind of stopping. So the shutter speed control is just a stylistic device. This was 1/800 of a second, so another fast one to stop those birds in motion. And same here, this one's in a little weird position, but that's what she was doing, so that's what I got. These are out at Lake Carlisle, Purple Martins. So this one was at 1/1600th of a second, so very, very, very fast. These little tree swallows or Purple Martins are very fast, and you need a very fast to capture that. The last one I have for you, this is not one of mine. I have some where I did this, but I couldn't find them. It's been, like I said, a train wreck lately, so it is what it is. I took this one off the internet. So sometimes you do want your camera motion to be making the blur, and we call that panning. And so I've done this quite a bit. Most especially, one of my favorite pictures I wanted to find is, if you ever have been to Pittsburgh, you might know of Kennywood Amusement Park. Well, it's been there since I was like 2, and I have a picture of Kate when she was 2 or 3 on a ride, and she is not blurry, but around her is blurry, and I have a picture of myself on that same ride. So, but I could not possibly find those. So this photographer went with the speed of the car, and it's tricky to do. I also have some that I took of a little weird kind of a horse race at the state fair one year, where they had these little chariots behind, and I have a super cool picture from that where I was able to move the speed of the chariot, and so the track and stuff was blurry. But those are tricky to do. But most of the time, you don't want your camera to be causing that motion blur. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about shutter speed? Oh, that is a very good question. Are you still doing a fast shutter speed when you're doing that? It depends, but usually no, because you want this blur, so you need enough to get that blur. So that was a very good question. And if I had to guess, I would say maybe 4 seconds. I don't know. That's just me taking a wag.
What makes you make the decision on the shutter speed that you are going to use?
It just 100% how I want it to look. When I'm taking my kid's soccer game and the ball is in the air, I want a fast shutter speed because I want to capture that action. And we've all had pictures where everything is blurry because your subject was moving, right? And so you usually don't want that. I would say most of the time, unless I'm taking a picture of running water, I probably don't want a slow shutter speed. But then I've seen some lovely pictures. I've been getting into bird photography lately, and I'm not super good at it, but I'm learning. And I've seen some beautiful pictures where they've got like the motion of the wings and stuff, and that would be another instance where you might want to have a slower shutter speed and show that motion. But most of the time, for me personally, I don't want that motion. Yeah. So the next part is, oh sure, sorry. Who? Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, I have a comment. Like, you had the car with
Sure.
the background blurred.
Yeah,
Like you said, that's called panning.
yeah,
The thing that's hard is if you say you go to a race car and there's race cars that come around the corner and you're trying to pan, you're trying to keep the car in the center of your frame, but the background is moving.
right.
But the hard part is getting it to focus that quickly.
Yes, yes.
So the trick that I learned is you find a spot, say there's a light pole behind you, and you say, I want to get a car when it hits that point right there. So what you do, I put a manual focus on the lens, and I'll focus there on that spot. Then I can move, and the car comes up, and I'm not autofocus, it's already focused.
Yeah.
It hits right at that spot, click, catch it.
Yeah, definitely.
It takes multiple attempts. You know, to get
Yeah, for sure, multiple times. And I really did not want to go to digital, but now that I have, I'm like, God, how did I ever do this without that instant seeing, oh yeah, that was what I wanted. No, that wasn't what I wanted. Okay, so the next thing that you're choosing is your aperture. How far is this open? And this has to do with matching the shutter speed in an inverse relationship. The bigger this is open, the faster your shutter speed can be, and the smaller this is open, the longer your shutter speed has to be, because you still need the same amount of light to hit your film or your digital sensor. And so if any of you are math people, that's just inverse proportion. One goes up, the other has to go down, and vice versa to keep that same amount of light.
That's why I'm not good at photography. I'm not good at math.
No, that's not even true. So the depth of field is actually really interesting because it's basically like you have a sheet of glass that is where you want to focus. So if I wanted to focus on Kate's hair bow right here, I've got this sheet of glass, and that glass is really thin where I have a really big number. The big number is actually an inverse relationship, and it means that it is small. So what happens is I've only got this little tiny plane that is in focus, but if I want a very wide depth of field, like I want all of her head or all of her head in the background or the whole room, that f-stop number needs to be bigger. The bigger that number is on your camera, the smaller this little hole is. And so you have to make a judgment. Do I want just her hair bow in focus? Do I want just her nose, just her face, just her whole head? What do I want to be in focus here? And so this one here, you can tell it where to focus. You tell your camera what you want to focus on. I have a tendency to use a small depth of field because I like my background to be fuzzy most of the time. I like to take pictures with trees and one leaf and buds and things like that. So in here, the aperture here was 5.3. So another thing that's also important is how long your lens is, because 5.3 and 5.3 are not the same, and how far away you are. 5.3, if I'm taking a picture of the arch from the Illinois side, is not the same as 5.3 if I'm taking a picture of Jay and I'm right here. So it's tricky. You just have to play around with it and get kind of a feel for it. And you can tell it. So this one I wanted to focus obviously more on the falls, and then oops, go back. This one I focused on her and not on the falls, and that was kind of the mood. I couldn't really decide what I wanted, so I just took both because, you know, it's digital. This trip was actually my first introduction to digital photography, and when I bought the camera at Schiller's in St. Louis, they had a return policy. I think it was like 3 weeks, and they're like, if you don't like it, you can return it. And I was like, well, then I'm taking it to Niagara Falls. We're gonna see how it does. And I liked it so much that I actually traded it in and got a more fancy, expensive model. So, but when you want everything in focus, like a big tall building like this, and it's not perfectly in focus, but it's pretty sharp, even up high, that's gonna be a bigger depth of field. No, and actually, I lost the data on that. And then, so for one like this has an f-stop of 5. And then you can see that the focus on just the leaves is very sharp and the background is blurry. And then make sure I say this right, the smaller that number, the bigger the opening. And the smaller that number, the blurrier your background. So you could still have a kind of blurry background for this one at f5. If I would have said f1.2, you probably wouldn't be able to distinguish anything in the background. But from here you can kind of see there's a branch and there's some more red leaves and some green leaves and things like that. So it's all about making the picture that you want to make. And so there's this one I took in Pennsylvania in October. This was only an f8. But the lens that I used was only on 80 millimeters, which is pretty short for a lens. They'll go from pretty typical, this one is my all-purpose lens, it is 18 to 300. When you see something that is really zoomed in, it depends on how far away it is. So it might seem like it's, you know, like for this one, 80 is what it was, and the trees are a little fuzzy but not unrecognizable, which is exactly what I was intending. So yeah, and then there's going to be times when it doesn't matter, like this one. So these ones are a little out of focus, but when you have a sky behind you, it doesn't really matter if that's in focus or not. So you're just kind of deciding what you want. This one, you can read the Western Auto. And so this was in Kansas City, and that one I thought I had the data on that one, but I don't. That was probably, I don't know, maybe a 20 or maybe, so a bigger number to get bigger things in focus. So what happens is these things pair up, and so for me, if I'm taking a picture of a bird, I'm gonna probably have only the bird in focus. I don't care about the background because I want my shutter speed to be faster. If I wanted the whole thing to be in focus, my shutter speed has to be slower. So that tells me I might need a tripod or a monopod, which I brought you the one to show you. I didn't bring a tripod because everybody knows what a tripod looks like. But somebody gave me this for a present, and it is actually a hiking pole with a tripod top, and it is actually one of the best presents I've ever gotten. I use it all the time because it just gives me a little bit of steadiness. I have joint problems and I'm not super steady, and I will also often lean my camera up against whatever's handy, a tree, a building, a signpost, somebody else that's not as unsteady as I am. But this, Daniel, but this is really good because you just flip it out, and if you are interested in something like this, I don't know where they got this, but the head came from Schiller's, and it you can just clip it on and off real quick, so it works out really well. Cool. So, okay, any aperture questions? David, you probably shoot, I've seen some of your beautiful St. Louis pictures. What's your aperture you use for those?
That made it my sweet spot. To have a medium aperture.
Yeah.
But I'm shooting a lot of the cityscapes, so, you know, I'm maybe
Yeah.
a quarter mile, half mile away.
Yeah.
Shooting a big scene.
I wanted to show you guys, I put some of these on my website, but I wanted to show you some of the bird pictures. I was testing out some lenses several months ago because I wanted a long lens, but as I already mentioned, I have joint problems. I also have a torn rotator cuff that I am not getting surgery for, and so I wound up not keeping any of them, but some of these were taken with a longer lens, and so this was fun. These were various places around. This was an osprey, and I just wanted to kind of show you, this pelican was a couple weeks ago, Gulf Shores. 8 minutes? Okay, cool. So you can kind of see, I wanted to show you what these were shot with. So this was an F11. You can kind of still see that we're, you know, at this was like the bayou or something. And then this bird is all completely in focus, and the shutter speed for this was 1/600th of a second. So just kind of giving you an idea. This was a cloudy day. It wasn't super sunny. If it was sunnier, I could have, if I wanted to, had a bigger F number. This little tern was very interesting because I've never seen one before, even though we have them in Illinois. And I never seen the brown pelicans, and I like this guy because he looked like he was just doing a dance. And that one was 1/2500th of a second, 1/2500th of a second, to get that pelican suspended in his dance.
So, digital photo, how easy is it for you to quickly change those settings?
Those settings.
A very good question. It is very, very quick. And the other thing I want to tell you, that is very important to take away. Let me go back to where I was. So I always do something called bracketing. It is a giant pain in the ass when you have 3 of every picture, and then you have to delete 2/3 of the pictures. And every time I'm like, why did I do this? But the bracketing is a button on your camera, and you can look up in your camera manual or Google for YouTube videos. Those are the best place, because when I borrowed my daughter's camera and I had to watch like 1 billion YouTubes, and then I wound up buying the same model. It was different than the model I was used to for however long it's been since I went digital. And so yeah, but the bracketing gives you an over and under, it gives you what it thinks you should have, and then an under and an over. And then you can decide, because sometimes your camera thinks you need something, but really you needed a little less light, a little more light. And there's a plus and minus button that I use all the time. And that little plus and minus button, you can come up and look at it if you want to. It looks like this. You can quickly look at it and say, oh no, that's too dark. Oh no, that's too light. But for the most part, your cameras today do a pretty decent job of getting close. I don't use a light meter anymore. I haven't used one since I went digital, and actually the Nicomat did a really good job, and I didn't often use it even back then. And do you ever use a light meter? And so the other thing I wanted to tell you is you have camera modes, right? So you've got one called automatic that you should never use. You should never use the flash if you can get away with it, unless your grandkid's cute and you want a picture and you know they're gonna have red eyes or whatever, then that's fine. But on the modes, there is one called P, and it stands for program, and that means the camera's telling you what it thinks you should have. It thinks you should have this aperture with this shutter speed to make the picture, and then you can override that. So that's what I shoot a lot of the time. But then there's 2 more that are helpful, and the next one is aperture priority, and that means you put in how big you want this opening to be, and then the camera will tell you the shutter speed. And so that is what I mostly do. I usually pick my aperture and let the camera pick my shutter speed. But there's another one called S for shutter speed priority, and then I would say, oh, I have to have a fast shutter speed because I want to get this bird in flight. And then my camera's going to choose the aperture, and that's going to determine how much behind and in front of him is blurry or not. So, last quick thing, if you want to come up and look at it, I put some different ways, and I'll email this to you if you want me to, how you can photograph your own artwork, because Christine asked me about that last time, and I was like, oh, that's exactly what people need to know. So I do have a light box here if anybody wants to look at it. It belongs to my daughter, not this daughter, my other daughter, but these were all, so this one I hung a command hook on my wall, and I took it like that. Now, if you do that, you want to do it in a room that does not have direct sun coming in, and you don't want the lights on, but you want it to be a bright room. So if you,
Photo of this.
yeah, that's a photo of that, thank you. So this one is outside. So outside in the shade is the perfect place to take pictures of your artwork. The lighting is always really good. And you can just put, I recommend a black cloth and something like velvet that's not shiny is the best way to do that. This one was outside, and this one was, oh, this was the camera. This was the iPhone camera, and this was in the light box. So just to kind of give you an idea of what you can do. The light box is pretty small, but you can also buy white foam core that I know you all know what that is. And just kind of make yourself a little box to take it in. So, so yeah, so these are just some various pictures. This was outside also. You can see it's pretty easy to see like really good detail. I just waited until the sun went past the patio, put a black cloth down, and just shot straight down onto the image. This was, somebody did a painting for me, and so I shot that. This was also outside, so that would be my recommendation, that either the light box, this was with the light box, so either the light box or outside would be my best recommendation. But then if you have something big that you can't take outside, or if you have something big that you can't get on top of outside, I have had things where I had to get up on a ladder to take the shot down to get the whole thing in. But just do it inside, but try to do it where you're in a bright room that doesn't have light coming in the window. And if you look at it and you're like, oh no, that is a shadow, then take a big piece of the white foam core and hold it. Or Daniel was my holder of light blocker the other day. So yeah, so just to kind of give you some ideas or some ways. And this was taken on the wall inside. And I'm always happy to, I tried to take a picture of this ceramic bowl that my daughter's artist friend made for me. I had the worst time because it was shiny. It was very difficult. So this one was actually putting it inside on a flat surface was the only way I could get, but this was outside. It was just too shiny even in the shade. So yeah, so if you ever have questions about shooting your artwork, just let me know.
Do you use daylight bulbs when you're doing them outside?
No.
You don't have the yellow light, or do you want the yellow?
Good question. So I don't use light bulbs. She asked me if I use daylight bulbs inside. So I don't use light bulbs inside. I just let the brightness of the day without being direct sunlight be the source of light. But if you need to use a light source, you can use a daylight, a 500 bulb, but it's tricky to do it without shadows if you're just using it like in a regular lamp. So I don't really recommend that unless you just don't have another option. Yes, so, okay, I have to stop.
Barb, that was great.
Thanks.
And we're gonna pass the name on to Susan because you said you'd be willing to do a workshop.
Yes, I definitely will. I definitely will.
That would be fun.
Awesome. Thanks for listening. And anytime you have questions, you can email me. You can, if you can message me on Instagram or whatever. I loaded most of these up to Instagram already, so they're there for you to look at.
Well, thank you for letting us play.
Oh,
I mean,
for sure.
You know,
Yeah.
it's always fun to play with new things.
Always fun to play with new things. Thanks.
Yes. I love it. All right, so Barb, you're gonna get the